Yeah, and it seems so easy, like when you share some of these tips that you do, but it's when you're in the throes of emotion and you've got a frustrated child and a
Oh yeah.
frustrated parent, so often it's the little simple things that we miss,
You overlook. Yep.
overlook,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's where you come into play, which is great. One of the other questions that I thought of is if a scenario, if you have a child that seems to do well on all their homework and they really struggle on like during the test and they don't do well on the test, what would you have some suggestions for that?
So that's test anxiety. Sometimes when they hear the word test, they're like, they freeze up or they get nervous. I try to avoid using that word and I try to let the student know they're just making sure you understand the materials that were covered. It's just, everything you've done, now they're just changing the numbers. It's more practice. So if they start viewing it as, okay, they just want to make sure I understood it so that we can move on, it's better for them because they're not hearing the word test. So I try to stay away from certain words because it could be a trigger for them. I've had students that would do great. The second they get to school, okay, we're ready for the test, and they get nervous. And it's sometimes it's just a trigger word, but they need to just breathe, remember just their basic foundations, because usually when they're being tested, they'll give them a simple version, and then as it keeps going, they give them a long, harder version. And now they're like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Well, for example, PEMDAS, you can have 2 different terms, 3 different terms. The end, it could be longer. You can have 5 or 6 different terms. You just have to remember your simple rules. It doesn't matter how long it is. It's like adding single digits. If you're adding 4 plus 7, it's the same thing as adding, 12,300 plus 1,208. It's just longer, but it's the same foundation. So they just have to make sure that they remember their simple stuff and keep longer terminology away from them if they have test anxiety.
I like what you said in reference to just changing the word test to they just want to make sure that they've done a good job and the material and it's just in a more formal fashion that is required. So I like that.
And some students are hard on themselves when they see, oh, I only got 70%. Okay, you understood 70% of the material that was on that paper. It's okay. Keep moving forward. Try to whatever you're not understanding. I will tell you, sometimes they don't like to ask questions, especially middle schoolers, high schoolers. You're in class. Who wants to raise their hand and ask a questions in front of all their peers? Because they're thinking, well, my friends already know the answer. I don't want to be the one to ask the question. But little do they know, their friends might have the same questions, just that nobody wants to, they're afraid, to ask. And so we want to make sure that we can answer their questions, but at the same time, build their confidence so that they're not afraid to ask.